Hello, Fox Fairy, where I talk about marginalized subjects from a marginalized viewpoint, while I learn to draw. Hello, sorry I haven't uploaded in a while. I've been caught up in the drama of moving and starting college, so it's been quite a complicated situation for me. Today is gonna be a more harsh, sad, serious video than normal, as this is covering a very serious topic. And I want to point out before I continue that I am cis, and though it's not okay for someone who's cisgender to speak over trans people on what they need, this is me simply explaining the current situation with the trans genocide in America. What is the trans genocide in America? The current trans genocide in America is the accumulation of events that could lead to the future genocide of trans individuals if something is not done very soon. We will be going over the 10 stages of genocide that is provided by the Holocaust Museum and comparing them to recent events in relation to transgender issues. Stage 1. Classification. In this stage, the differences between people are pointed out and disrespected. This is seen everywhere in relation to trans people. With transvestigators, people online trying to point out different celebrities as trans or not. With the trans sports dilemma, where people disrespect the differences in trans people in sports. Or the trans bathroom dilemma, where people point out the differences in trans women so much that they refuse to let them into the correct bathroom. Which is particularly bad because most people in a bathroom are just trying to pee, and most trans people in a bathroom are more scared of the cis people in the bathroom than the cis people should be scared of them. In stage 1, stereotypes tend to be made about the trans people, or the minority in particular. These stereotypes include exaggerated femininity in trans women. Oftentimes, people on the conservative side of the debate tend to push the idea that trans women are a hyper-feminized, very offensive portrayal of womanhood. Predatory nature. Conservatives like to push the idea that trans people are predatory, that most trans people are peeping on you in the stalls, trying to get to your kids, or trying to take advantage of small innocent people or young minds, which obviously isn't true. Trans people are just trying to exist in themselves, and then the media twists everything they do into problematic or wrong things, and oftentimes things are misconstrued, or things haven't even happened at all. Sure, there are a few trans people that are predatory, but that is not the majority of the community. And in most cases, they're not even weaponizing their transness to be predatory, they're just being predatory and happen to be trans. There is another stereotype that people transition for malicious reasons, when in actuality, most people who transition to feel more comfortable in their body. There actually isn't even more than maybe 1 or 2 cases ever of someone transitioning for malicious reasons. There's a stereotype that trans men are trying to avoid the patriarchy or avoid the standards put on women. This isn't true. A trans man doesn't transition because he feels unrepresented as a woman. He's transitioning because he's not a woman. Furthermore, there's a stereotype that trans men are transitioning because they feel quirky or they want to be different or special. This, again, isn't true. The only people who are claiming transness as a reason to be quirky or special are not transitioning, don't have the intention to even come close to transitioning, and wouldn't transition if everything was perfect for them and they were given the opportunity. Another point under stage 1 is trans people, or the minority in question, are excluded for being perceived as different. You see this in sports, where trans people aren't allowed to participate in sports. Schools, where trans children aren't allowed to change their name and pronouns publicly. Pronoun and name changes aren't respected by very many people. Parts of the LGBT community, called the Drop the T community, wants to exclude them from the community that was meant to protect them from the beginning, and some women's rights turf groups have been excluding them from their feminism. Trans people's separation from cis people, though existing for a very long time, is more apparent recently than it was before. Remember Christine Jorgensen? XGI becomes Blonde Beauty. Talking about trans people was so much different in earlier times than it was today because it wasn't such a politicized issue. Stage 2. The stage 2 of genocide is symbolization, a visual manifestation of hatred or a forced self-identification or other identification of people. Employees of the Texas Department of Public Safety were ordered to compile a list of everyone who changed their gender on their own driver's license. This has happened in some other places as well, where their state, their government, or their local businesses have been compiling names of and lists of people who have changed their gender or have done anything to express that they are trans. And Florida and many other states have outed children to their parents if they use a different name or pronouns with their friends at school, which is none of their parents' business. Stage 3, discrimination. Civil rights and things that these groups need are denied. In Texas, Tennessee, Florida, many other states, people are not legally allowed to wear clothes that do not match their birth sex in public. In many states, you can be outed to your parents if you go by a different name or pronouns than you were assigned at birth with your friends at school. In many states, very many states, most trans people cannot participate in sports. In many states, you can't transition if you have a mental health issue or if you are neurodivergent, which would mean that autistic people couldn't get treatment for their dysphoria. People with ADHD couldn't get treatment for their dysphoria. People with anxiety or depression, keep in mind that anxiety and depression are often diagnosed with gender dysphoria, would not be able to transition. This is a block specifically meant to prevent people from getting care even if they are adults. You can get your genitals inspected by teachers or coaches in public schools. As a child, how is this okay? There's a trans panic defense in many different states where if you are flirting with someone and they find out you're trans and they decide to go crazy and kill you, they can claim self-defense in court. In Oklahoma, it's a felony to provide gender-affirming care, which includes therapy, for anyone under the age of 26. An employee must misgender students in schools in Arizona. They legally aren't allowed to speak their name or pronouns to them. And trans people can't attend the correct bathrooms or changing rooms in many schools and public establishments legally in many states, and those establishments are not legally required to have a gender-neutral bathroom or a bathroom for trans people to use instead, forcing them to go through emotional and psychological anguish every time they have to go pee. Stage 4, dehumanization. This is when people are treated as if they are not human. In Florida, many people, hundreds, thousands of people, are migrating out of Texas because they don't feel safe, because they have family who are trans, or because they are trans, and they're worried that they will be prosecuted by their state. The state governor and many government officials related to this state have said good riddance and have treated people having their entire lives ruined, having to leave their families behind, their friends behind, their jobs and homes and everything they've ever known behind. They treat it as a good riddance, as if you're some sort of plague or pestilence that needs to be shooed from their home, instead of a person who's going through a unique struggle that they will never begin to understand. Michael Knowles recently in a speech said that transgenderism must be eradicated from public life as we know it. This is completely treating all trans people as if they are some sort of ideology or some sort of sickness, not as people, again, as you see. The Bud Light situation with Dylan Mulvaney has caused outrage in many conservatives, but they don't see Dylan Mulvaney in all of this. All they see is that Dylan Mulvaney was in one of their campaigns and they sent a single can with her face on it to her in order to appreciate her, having sponsored her during the Super Bowl. This causes them to outrage and for them to destroy things and threaten people and make very threatening videos with weapons. Again, not considering the humanity of people involved in this situation. The Target boycott situation, where they're treating LGBT issues as if they're a social contagion because Target has a Pride collection and because there was one artist who worked on one Pride project or one piece of Pride merch who also worked on a completely separate, unrelated merchandise with Satanist messages on it. Marching into Target, treating everyone who supports the Pride section as evil predators, treating everyone around them as if they are some sort of evil, and trying to convert kids, walking into the alcohol section with rainbow and pride themed alcohols saying that they're trying to convert your children, and going into adult wear, grabbing swimsuits that say tuck friendly and lying about it being for children. The Sure Foundation Baptist Church calls trans people slurs whenever they mention them, dehumanizes them, and calls for public execution of all transgender individuals, pushing for this legally in their state. Stage 5. Organization. Hate groups begin to congregate and genocides are planned. The Sure Foundation, again, calls for the death of trans people and public execution. That's pretty obvious right there. A hate group congregating and planning to genocide another group. Nazis show up in mass at a drag story hour in a public park and calling for blood. Conservatives nationwide call for death and harm of trans people, making intimidating videos and trying to express digital terrorism. Conservatives celebrate trans people being forced to move and want to possibly instill laws that make them become deported from their state or from the country as a whole. Stage 6. Polarization. Hate groups propagandize and groups extremify further. There are many examples of this that I couldn't even begin to get through, but Fox News constantly speaks about trans people in a negative light, painting them as criminals, pedophiles coming for your children, using children as a scapegoat to try and make people push their hate against something so they have a lever topic to encourage more people to vote on behalf of the Republican Party. There's a video online that paints a protest as saying, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." But actually what was being said was, "We're here, we're queer, we're not going shopping," but the person holding the camera and one other person were mocking the protest. Then that section was edited and used as propaganda for the right. Groomer claims fill the internet as people accuse all people who are a part of the LGBT community, but especially trans people, of being groomers and pedophiles, non-stop. It fills every public space, every public lobby, and anywhere you go. Many trans people claim to be terrified to be in public spaces and don't feel safe in their own neighborhoods and their own homes because of this extremification. Stage 7. Preparation. Persecutors plan genocides, and they often mask intentions behind a positive-sounding goal. Many of them like to front that they are protecting your children. However, they still do nothing in regards to protecting children. They've done nothing about the many shootings that have been happening in public schools. They knew nothing about the genital inspections that they have enforced in your schools or attempted to enforce. They do nothing about bullying in their campus, which relates to a larger amount of suicide worldwide. Again, the video where it says they're coming for your children, conservatives are painting a picture that trans people are coming for your children when they're just planning to live their lives without having to hide who they are, without having to pretend like they don't exist. That does not akin even closely to coming for anyone's children. Nazi groups chant blood and pedophiles at public events sporting trans people or people they perceive as trans people. The Sure Foundation, again, calls for the suicide of trans people, calling them perverts. Michael Knowles calls for the eradication of trans people, and trans people have been moving out of their home states in fear of this persecution because not only are they scared of their government attacking them, but they're also scared of the people who they live near attacking them. Because it's kind of hard to live somewhere when you know that over 50% of the population, or at least what seems to be, want you dead. Stage 8, Persecution. This is when segregation begins, death lists are drawn, massacres and genocides begin. This is the stage we are currently on. Trans children in Florida can be removed from their families and put into the care of Child Protective Services. This is a form of segregation and a form of cultural genocide. In some states, parents and doctors may be persecuted for offering gender-affirming care, meaning jail time or fines for parents or doctors who perform therapies, hormones, or puberty blockers for someone who is under the age of whatever age they have specified, which is not only 18. Many times it's higher. For example, like I said earlier, in Oklahoma, it's a felony to provide gender-affirming care for anyone under the age of 26, which I hate to break it to you, but anyone over the age of 18 is an adult and should be able to control their own body. I think 26 is a bit much. People may be arrested in some states for dressing in a way that makes them comfortable. Part of a drag bill. But really, they know what they were doing. They were trying to arrest trans people for expressing themselves in a way that does not harm anyone. Fear tactics are used everywhere to try and scare trans people out of their homes, to try and get them out of their states, and out of the country in some places. Where are we headed? Well, we aren't headed in a great direction. Continuing along stage 8, there are some bills in the process of being passed that may make it so that anyone who molests minors is given the death penalty, but they also define molesting minors in a way that would include any gender-affirming care. And they might extend the ages at which someone is considered a child who can be molested a higher age, which would lead to any doctors wanting to perform gender-affirming care or even surgeries on adults to getting the death penalty. In the future, you could see stage 9, Extermination, where people begin to try and kill trans people. I wouldn't exactly say that I can't see this happening. Adult trans people being labeled as groomers and pedophiles and then attacked by hate groups like evangelicals or Nazis, being attacked by the state even, persecuted as being pedophiles or perverts. Trans kids forced to detransition while their parents get given the death penalty, or as an alternative, being put into conversion camps and being forced to detransition and given abuse from the system. Another future stage I could see us reaching, which I feel really bad to say, but denial. We already see censorship spreading like wildfires. LGBT books are being banned from the shelves of libraries, and Holocaust subjects are not allowed to be taught in Florida because it's considered woke. So the people of the future, if we do enter a trans genocide, would not only not have language to describe trans people properly, but they wouldn't have the language to describe the genocide that was going on. Not only are states like Florida trying to encourage this kind of genocide, but they're trying to take away the resources to identify it. But I'm cisgender. Why should I care? It doesn't just affect trans people. They're not going to stop at T. They're gonna move backwards. Just because they're targeting trans people right now doesn't mean that they're going to stop. They're going to realize that they have more power than they thought they did and continue backwards from where they started, demonizing people of different sexualities and different expressions in order to try and take away their rights, using them as a lever issue. Because really, they don't care about trans people or gay people. They just care about getting votes and getting power. If you have to sacrifice a couple people in order to do that, they're going to. Some bills are already being passed that target people who have same sex attraction. We can legally be discriminated against in establishments again because of the Supreme Court's decision, or how gay marriage can be denied to someone if the minister decides that they wouldn't feel comfortable and they wouldn't feel like this marriage is moral, which also applies to interracial marriages, marriages between neurodivergent people, or marriages between people who are of different faiths. And even so, there are more laws currently in place and other systems currently in place that specifically target people for being LGBT and having same gender attraction. For example, the Gay Panic Defense supports someone being offended that you, someone of the same gender as them, flirted with them or made a sexual pass at them, and that if they decide to kill you, they can claim self defense in court. There are lack of protections for people with same gender attraction in several states. In fact, in some states, you can be denied service for being LGBT, or you can be denied service to basic essential needs like insurance or Medicaid. Sometimes medical professionals can refuse to operate on you. How would that feel if the only hospital within hundreds of miles of your home refuses to operate on LGBT people? What are you gonna do? Die? These will be expanded in the case that a trans genocide is completed. Even then, gay and lesbian marriage is on the chopping block, circa the Supreme Court. And even not talking about LGBT rights, people are hurting, dying, being ripped from their families and their homes and their friends and everything they've ever known. And if you don't care about that, if you don't want to do something about that, you are selfish, arrogant, and privileged. You need to grow some empathy and get out there and do something. How can you sit and watch this happen? Obviously, this is bad. And obviously, something needs to be done. Make your voice heard. Stand up. Furthermore, it's more than just LGBT people who are affected. It's parents of disabled and neurodivergent people, parents who have children. What if you only have one child? What if you're a single parent and your child has to use the restroom in a public establishment and you don't trust them to be able to go in there on their own? You worry that they might be assaulted, might get lost, might get hurt. What if your child needs help accessing the facilities, but you aren't the same sex as your child? Doesn't that make you angry? That you can't help your child use the restroom, that you can't help your son, who, sure, he's 26, but he can't operate the facilities alone. He needs help, but you can't help him because you're his single mother. Don't you think that's messed up? Don't you think something needs to be done about that? And even then, discussions of intersex people are completely unincluded in these discussions. What about people whose sex isn't discernible at birth? What if people have had corrective surgery, but it doesn't turn out to be the gender that they identified with? You can't exactly say that it's wrong when they decide to transition to another gender. That's just, you wouldn't even know. And even when they are one of the biological sexes, but they're still intersex, how are these issues going to be treated? Are these people going to be treated properly? People with PCOS, women with beards, masculine muscular and skeletal structures, are they going to be treated normally? Are they going to be allowed to use the women's restroom? They're cisgender women. Are you going to treat them horribly just because they're somewhat different than everyone else? Conclusion. There is a trans genocide in America. It is your business. It is everyone's business to prevent and reverse all that is targeting trans people at this time, or we might end up in a fascist theocracy. Do you want religion controlling your life? Alright, that was a bit of a serious video. I'm sorry it was so late, I've been so busy. I don't know about my posting schedule in the future, but since I managed to find a way to post in the new house, as I have completely moved in at this point, I'll probably figure something out. College classes start next week, so my posting schedule may remain a bit wonky, but I will try my best to get scripts and videos out there. I'm really trying my best. I'm trying very hard. I worked very hard on this video for all of you. If you would like some community, in the pinned comment, I have all of my online stuff, and in there is a Discord called Gravity Knight Gay Solidarity. That is my Discord server, and if you would like to join, you are more than welcome. In fact, you can invite anyone you want, even if they're not interested in discourse, even if they're not gay. It doesn't matter, as long as they agree with the core principles listed in the rules. I also have my Tumblr and my Instagram linked in there, as well as some resources for anyone to use. If you would like to contact me using any of the information there, please do. Please leave a comment below, like, and subscribe. That's all I had to say. Well, I love you. Bye. Hey guys, I just wanted to say that this video took longer than I expected to edit. I had run into some issues after classes started and I got a new job. My schedule was entirely full and I had a really big issue with procrastination. I should be maintaining a much more regular posting schedule, and I will eventually make my way back into either weekly or bi-weekly posts. If I don't, I am sorry. It's very difficult to maintain a schedule while being a university student. I appreciate your viewership, and I will be working on the next video the moment this goes up. So thank you for your viewership, and I love you.